Lads, it's Spurs. Sadly, that famous three-word team talk was not redeployed in last season's Europa League final, and we can therefore deduce that that's the only reason. Big Ruben gets to lock his squad inside Carrington during the week now to explain basic mathematical equations. James and Pete are only just over that disappointment. In fact, they're only just back from Bilbao, having treated the trip like an entire series of Hunted. Representing Tottenham, Abdul's promised not to go on about it too much, though he did let slip that he's been learning Basque. Or was it wearing a Basque? Let's find out. Glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur, Abdul. And then your trophy-winning manager gets binned.
Just like Spurs, but it's one of the things that it was a magnificent night. It was brilliant, but in the cold, harsh light of day, it was a big decision. Do you know what I mean? And fans were split. You know what I mean? 50-50.
Where were you?
I was. Thank you very much, Ange. But yeah, you came in off the back of the Conte years, which were grim. You know what I mean? I basically almost gave up following Spurs, not completely, because it was just turgid, angry. You know what I mean? A lot of anger within the club at that time. Crap football. Ange came in, great start and everything, and he had a philosophy, but he didn't always have the players that he needed, and he didn't compromise in any way. And that's a good thing. It's like you live by your beliefs, but you also die by your beliefs. And when you see your league form, and you're just going, and you're getting talked about in the relegation chat, and could you not? That's not good enough. You know what I mean? And I think it just scared the higher ups that the trophy is perfect. That's for the fans, but for a club to be even flirting with relegation, you couldn't stick with him.
Yeah, well, United did, but it wouldn't be Spurs.
Well, as you say that was one of the things that came up in the discourse was, don't do like you did. He's won us a cup, and then you saw your league form after that the following season, and then you made a decision, and you've almost been playing catch up to try and get yourself back. And I think Levy looked at that and just thought, no, don't get caught up in the emotion of winning a cup.
But he probably also thought, I've not sacked a manager for a full 5 minutes. Pete, what was that thing you dug up where, is it 12 managers in 9 years? Is that right?
Possibly so. Certainly 6. I kind of compared it to us and Spurs since, say, Fergie went. Can I just say, and I should stand up at this point, today is the anniversary of when Sir Alex Ferguson joined Manchester United, 6th of November 1986. Anyway, good times. We all know what happened after that. And then he went in 2013. I think both clubs have been on to the 6th manager since then, and it's only been 12 years. And I think with Tottenham, if you take Pochettino out, Abdul, all the others that have come by have had just 12 months. It does feel like you're not giving managers time to build something lasting, And just one other thing, but I remember thinking was a bit of a sliding doors moment for Tottenham. I managed to get to Spurs when one of Ollie's last games, we won 3-0 there. And I think you sacked Nuno shortly after that.
Yeah.
And yet he'd won your manager of the month, hadn't he, in August? You'd got off to a great start. And you sacked him, I think, to get Conte in ahead of Man United sacking Ollie and maybe going for Conte. I could be wrong. But that haste may have messed things up a little bit for you. But that's just a view from 200 miles away.
You're right. The pressure was on. We brought in Nuno, and lovely guy, and he was proud to be there, and we liked that. You know what I mean? He, in his joining video, it was like, I'm doing this for the club and things like that. And we just thought, what a decent guy. Great little start. He got a manager of the week or whatever sort of thing, and then he reverted to type. He was always been that sort of defensive manager, cautious manager, and it just didn't gel with us. And the game against yourselves, it was the excuse that Levy needed to just go, because as soon as you start moving away from criticising the manager to criticising Levy at the time, that's when he acts.
Yeah.
And he just acted swiftly. And we had a director of football, Paratici, who, Italian guy, was looking around at possible replacements. And there were a few who looked like Gattuso and things like that, where the fans were like, no, we're not having him. And then we ended up with Conte. Likewise, he was out there free. It was almost like, get him before you did your sacking. So, yeah.
I was working with you that day, Abdul, and I remember you banging the desk because I was running up and down the stairs, and I remember doing a bulletin for Radio 4, and I think Cavani or Ronaldo, Ronaldo might have scored a cracker that day, and it was about, was it 3-0? And I can't remember, but I remember we had it on the monitors, and I remember having to give a live score update, and then I came back down. I think they scored another. I just remember banging on the desk. Oh, yeah, it is Spurs, he supports, not Arsenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Still, anyway, that said, there was a lot of talk at the end of last season that, Spurs can't win this because Spurs are just like Spursy Spurs, and United have got it in. I can't remember, was it Scholes who said it? In the DNA to win trophies. It was a big shock for a lot of people, even though Tottenham fans in Bilbao will tell you like the entire day felt like that to them. I want to start with you, Pete. How did it feel from your point of view? What was the vibe you were getting? Because I think your trip was maybe marginally shorter than James's. I'm not sure. We'll come on to it.
It was a great trip, only spoilt by a no-show from our favourite football team. The trip, because the hotel prices were going way. I was a bit late getting a ticket, really. I had to go into the second ballot, so I couldn't really commit myself. By the time I got a ticket, hotel and airfares were through the roof. Anyway, my mate who works in freight forwarding had the plan to drive down to Portsmouth on the Monday lunchtime, get a ferry to Santander, a 36-hour ferry, 36 hours, Santander to Bilbao on the day, stay over one night near Bilbao, and then drive back to Santander, and then get a bit of a speedboat ferry back. It was only 19 hours because we went to Plymouth. So got us back on the Friday. So great adventures. I thought adventures were well past me. Adventures like that were well past me then in my 70th year. But I went with it, survived it. But in the middle of it was, like I say, I don't think United turned up. I thought Tottenham did okay, but it wasn't a great Tottenham performance. But we just couldn't press them. And I think his tactics were defensive at the start of the game, and he certainly should have brought Garnacho on earlier than he did. But obviously we realised, we probably saw the beginnings of what he felt about Garnacho then.
I want to know how he felt on the way back. Like, what was everyone on your trip saying about it? Because it was such a miserable end to the season. And yet everyone I spoke to was like, well, yeah, okay, but still, he didn't actually want that job until now. So
the games have been so poor up to that. So it's not just the results. Obviously, nobody wants bad results. But at United, obviously, like most clubs, and Tottenham fall into this category, you want to be on the edge of your seat or on your tiptoes if you're in the standing areas. You want to be thrilled. You want to have that daring do, going forward with power and pace, like both our clubs have had a reputation for 60, 70 years. And we were nowhere near that under Amrin when he came in November. I know it was mid-season, but he could still have gone on the offensive a bit more, I think. But I was still in his camp because obviously you don't start sacking managers after 8 months.
So what was it like with you, James? Were you in a big group or did you go by yourself? I didn't have time to. I know you've written an article for Mondial on this, and I didn't have time to read it. So
I met my mates out there, but I went on my own because, it's just kind of like herding sheep, trying to get plans together with a big group of people. So flew from Manchester to Paris and then got the bus from Paris to Bilbao overnight, which took about something like, 12 or 13 hours. Arrived in Bilbao at like 6 o'clock in the morning of the day of the final and thought, absolutely smash this. Just arriving into Bilbao, sun's like just coming over the sort of the river, doing like there was someone at the BBC must have got wind that I was going because I did did the hit for Radio Manchester, Radio Wales, 5 Live, Radio 4, like 5 or 6 different interviews, and I was like, United are going to win. Spurs, there's nothing to be ashamed of. They've just beaten the Athletic Club in the semi-final. I was really confident about it because I was like, well, I couldn't see them losing it, and then obviously it didn't work out that way. And then after, it was bad. I woke up. So there's one thing, right, seeing your team lose the European final. The next thing is, I remember waking up in the pool of my own blood because I'd fallen down an escalator. You can just roughly see the scar still on my elbow from where it happened. So these weird escalators that sort of went up, and I managed to fall into one.
Some of them do go up, I think it's about half of them.
And basically just completely ruined my elbow. And I woke up with this massive hangover in a pool of my own blood and noticed that I'd missed my flight, which was fantastic. So I had to stay in Bilbao for an extra 2 days afterwards and ended up meeting this random Brazilian in my hostel that I spent the day with. And I didn't actually have it in me to explain to her why I was there. I just lied to her and said I was working, and I ended up going around the museums in Bilbao with this random Brazilian woman. It's all right.
Still in touch?
Yeah, she's not on social media, which is quite nice. But
After certain finals United have appeared in, we've kind of done all kinds of magazines and stuff on the back of them. I said, do get in touch. We want to know all your stories. I just think with Bilbao, we leave it there. We leave it there. I want to come on to Just get in touch with other stuff if you want. You can find us on Creamer Manchester 1878, obviously. Creamer Manchester 1878 at gmail.com. And all the socials you'll find yourself. Hashtag yourself senseless. But I want to talk about some happier times. Sorry, Abdul, for United. So I've had two of the best days out of my life at White Hart Lane. So
Come on, then.
I think it was the first time I went there. United were 3-0 down at half time. Now, everyone knows this story in terms of what happened, but it was quite the day because we decided, I was a young man at this time, I was a very young print journalist, and I never had to work weekends. So at this time, I got to basically every match. And some mates and I used to be mad for just getting on the beer. And we worked out that the police would be on it, dry trains, after a certain time. So we tried to go at 6:30 in the morning for a 3 o'clock kickoff. Missed the train. We got the next one, and we'd spent basically all day in London drinking. And at half time, it was United were 3-0 down. I was kind of sobering up, basically hungover already, and I was starving. And I queued up for all of half time, having lost my mates. And I was served. They gave me this pasty this slice in a bag, and I took it back to where I was standing, and it was burnt to a crisp, right? And I couldn't go and queue up and complain. I was in such a terrible place, and I went up the stairs just at random thinking, I'm going to just stay for the rest of this game. And I immediately found my mates, and then United started scoring goals. And I think it was when the fourth one went in that 7 of us were in a pile, and the third one was a steward who supported Arsenal. It was an amazing day. Now, I know for a fact that it was in 2001, because when I went outside, I started singing It's Lucky for Spurs when the year ends in 1. And a load of big Spurs lads didn't take too kindly to it, but they just knew whereabouts this chant would come. Which one are you? Such a shame, this man for Spurs. And they were trying to find us all the way back to Seven Sisters without success. The police moved everyone out of the way, and they just chucked all the commuters out of the way, just get these lot up to Euston, get them out of the way. What a day out that was. Sorry. Were you born, James? No.
2001. No, my mum was pregnant with me.
Amazing. Yeah. How do you remember that day? You weren't the Spurs fan, Abdul, who put the 10 grand on the win at half time to win.
No. It was, you know what I mean? Because I moved out to Kent quite a while ago. It was always difficult to get up to White Hart Lane and stuff like that. So it was always sort of listening on the radio, and we're at home. You go 3-0 up at half time. 2-0. I would have been still a little bit jittery. 3-0, cigars are out, and yeah, we're okay. And as you start coming back, it's like, this is getting a bit, 3-2, okay. I'll take it, let's stop it now at 3-all. Let's stop it there, you know what I mean? And then to get pumped like that, it's the worst. It's not just that particular game. It gets repeated. You're driving home, or you know what I mean? And you go into work the next day, and it's always repeated. And it just buys into that narrative of, it's Spurs. It's okay, boys, it's Spurs. And that's, you think how long that's been going on for now.
Well, that was 2 years later for the 0-3 game.
Blimey, did they come from that? Or, you know what I mean? He had something.
That was the one. I lost a girlfriend over that. I just stayed in London it's well worth it, because it was a really nervy game. And I don't know how well you remember it, Pete, but Scholes, I think it was a header. But in any event, Scholes scored, and it was just really kind of, Arsenal had been really, really, really good. I think Tottenham fans definitely wanted us to win the league, but obviously no one wants their team to lose a game. It was a massive relief at the end of that one in 2003. And Keane was basically saying there was a lot of pressure on the team, and that's why they appreciated that the team talk didn't add any pressure to them. He just went, lads, it's Spurs. And they just immediately thought, actually, that's right.
That's
And so it's been. And of course, 99 to win the treble at those 3 trophies in 10 days. We beat Spurs. Spurs took the lead, I think, through Ferdinand, didn't they, Abdul? And and there was a banner. I'm sure I didn't dream this in the away end, and it just a massive banner in the Spurs end. It just said, "Let them win."
Now, you said, Abdul, you used to hate going to Old Trafford, and then you start enjoying going to Old Trafford.
Yeah, because it was always okay. You got to go all that way, and you know what I mean. I'm listening on the radio. You've got friends that have gone up. And the result was always a foregone conclusion. So when we did eventually beat you, it was, And then they go 23 years. It's like, bloody hell, do you know what I mean? And since then, you just need to break that hoodoo. And you were just so formidable back then for a long time as well. So the fact, Clint Dempsey getting the winner, and it's like, yeah, at last.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I've forgotten about it. Although I would say that we did have some very interesting goal line technology in one of those games as well.
Oh, mate.
With Roy Carroll. What was that? That must have been about 20 or 5.
You know what I mean? Pedro, and it is so far over there. And what's brilliant is that when you see the replay on the camera, and Roy Carroll is almost like they've zoomed in on his face, and he looks so guilty. It's like, let me get off. You know what I mean?
Oh, he's like a dog when he's ripped a load of cushions up, isn't he? It's amazing.
Yeah.
The ball was somewhere behind the scoreboard in the car park.
Oh.
I think. Of course, just to cheer Abdul up a bit, I mean, apart from losing that final last year, we lost 4 games to him in one season. I bet that's never happened before.
No.
The League Cup game when both teams decided to put a false number 1 in nets. And
hands like this for a Fraser.
That was the quarterfinal of the League Cup just before
I watched it in your house.
God, did you? Sorry, mate. I just can't believe it. What was it? That one?
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. They both the goalkeepers with the poppadom wrists. Yeah.
Yes.
That when Onana or the
No, it's
who was in goal.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. United conceded in consecutive games or thereabouts, direct from corners, didn't they? Just for a laugh.
Yeah.
But with 2 different keepers. And you thought, you've got keepers who, instead of just using their superpower, which is that they're allowed to clear people out. Nah, it's all right. Just stand there, lads. It still upsets me actually thinking about it because that could have been another great comeback. Yeah, you did watch that round, man. Yeah, I'd forgotten about it. Damn it! But the League Cup final in 2009, I'm sure we all remember. You'd have been what? 8, James. This is making me feel.
I do remember it because actually that was first. I don't want to make you all feel really old, but that was first season I properly remember getting into United like properly. But it's funny the things that you remember from that season because I remember crying when we lost the Champions League final to Barcelona. I remember crying when we lost the FA Cup semi-finals to Everton. It was like, well, it's not actually much fun, this, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Spurs would take that hole most seasons, wouldn't they?
But I remember actually that obviously the League Cup final was a really boring game of football. But I remember another Spurs game, I think it might have been that season where Ronaldo scored from an indirect free kick that was sort of March, April time. I think it was another 5-2 or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Spurs 2-0 up in that, I remember. I think you're right. It's Old Trafford, James. Yeah, 5-2. It's a good game. But I'm sure Spurs went 2-0 up in that game, but I could be wrong. There was certainly
that nervy sort of time at the end of that season where they lost to Fulham. Obviously the Villa game, and Liverpool was starting to gain a bit of ground on the title race, and United looked a bit. There was that sort of April, May time when they were dropping quite a lot of points. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. But down the years, one feature of United Tottenham games is they've had great atmospheres, great players, they've not all been great games, but my first introduction to footy was around the time just after Spurs had won the double in '61. So the first team to win the English double in that century, since the earliest football starting. So they had a bit of glamour to them. I just knew that as a kid, as a 9-year-old. But then they won the cup the following year. Then they won the Cup Winners' Cup. First British team, English team, I think, to win a European trophy. And then coincidentally, the first time my dad took me to a first team game was against Spurs in '64-65. And we won 4-1. And Law scored 2, Credden scored 2, which was very odd. Paddy Credden getting 2. Good game, but Spurs still had that bit of magic about them, Abdul. I think they've always seen that. I think other fans, I always thought, perhaps still do, maybe not in very recent years, but you've always tried to play that attacking football. You've always been an entertaining side and had some great players down the years, which I think other supporters respect you for, even though, there'd be a bit of bile thrown between fans. There was always that respect for Tottenham. Did that come across to you, Abdul, as a Tottenham fan growing up?
Definitely. It was always like the year ends in one. We were always getting to FA Cup finals. Ricky Villa, Ozzy Ardiles, Garth Crooks, Steve Archibald, Glenn Hoddle, everyone with a bit of swagger. And then you get to another generation with Gazza and Waddle, Lineker up front, and it was all we were the entertainment, and it's almost like one of us they call us a rival, West Ham. They're always like they've got to play the West Ham way, and we've almost got the Tottenham way. We know what we want. We know what we want to see. It's like everyone stands up, so and so. There's Aaron Lennon's on the ball. It's That's what we want. And that's what we've almost got in common with you guys, where you always used to have the two wingers and like bombing down the wing, crossing the ball in, whether it's Bex or anyone like that. But what it did do is sometimes sort of paper over the cracks that we weren't a really good league team in terms of, no one ever sort of feared us. Oh my God, they're getting close to winning the league. But in a cup, we were always there until we weren't. And then it's been ages since we will, actually get into finals. And after a while, it's like, this is just something that happens to other people. So,
and of course,
sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say that double winning team of 61, that was the last time you won the league, which is, you're getting worse than Newcastle if you're not careful.
Yeah. We had a couple of near misses.
Which United player ever, historically, in modern, whenever, if you could, would you like to have seen in a Spurs shirt?
Cantona. Cantona.
Yeah.
The
Good
swagger.
caller.
Yeah, there's the players, like you've got Bex, you've got the steady players, you've got your Gary Nevilles and stuff like that. But we can always get around that. Having someone that the opposition fears. We didn't have it for ages until we got Harry Kane, where everyone's like, oh God, Harry Kane, you know what I mean? Where if you're in a bad situation, you want them to give a bit of something. Whereas Cantona, I just loved his attitude to life. It was always like, the collars and stuff like that, and he would fit in perfectly at Spurs. You know what I mean? Definitely.
The irony is, Abdul, because I think you spotted a good call, is that when he finally retired early in 1997, Cantona, United went in for Sheringham to replace him.
Honestly, it was like a fever dream. I'd been to a wedding, and it was like the next day, and I'd woken up hungover, and sort of you put the telly on, sort of thing. It's like, what? And I felt like I was still drunk. He was like, well, how's this happened?
302, 65.
It was a shocker. And you could understand why, because he hadn't won anything. You know what I mean? And it was like, okay. And then he used to take the piss because he didn't start so well with you guys. And then he ended up winning the lot. And it was like, you couldn't hold it against him. But that was sort of the start of you poaching players from us that left us, went to you, won a title. Berbatov was a shocker, and he was an arsehole around that time doing that, refusing to play for us, and it happened just at the end of the transfer window, so we couldn't properly replace him. So that was grim. Carrick was the one where at the time I didn't appreciate what he did for us until he went to yourselves, slotted in perfectly, and it was like, yeah.
He was a lovely footballer, Michael Carrick. Pete, were you telling me about getting chased all the way back to Seven Sisters? A White Hart Lane once.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, more than once. 1970 was the first time I went there, I think, and it was on the football special. And of course, United have now great following in numbers of all caliber of supporters. Loyal, dedicated, tough, right mixture. Anyway, I'd heard that I remember getting off the underground, and it took ages to get to the ground, whereas everywhere else when I'd been in London then, I was only a youngish lad, but the grounds were only around the corner from the underground station. But Seven Sisters, where you get off at Tottenham, you go down Tottenham High Street, and it goes on forever. It's like the M6. And anyway, no problem going down there and getting in. It was all good stuff. And then about 4:30, because the matches used to end at 20-5 then, hence the song 20-5 Clobbering Time, which is another tennis favourite. And of course, this is going back to the days when we used to want to punch each other, generally. Well, we've kind of stopped doing that now. We just insult people on Twitter.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tottenham fans started singing "It's up to Knees Up, Mother Brown. It's a long way to Seven Sisters." And I thought, what are they going on about? What are they going? I know that. I've walked down there before the match. And what they meant is there was a lot of side streets on the way between the ground and Seven Sisters. And they came at United at every side street it was cat and mouse, really cat and mouse. Luckily, I was much younger and I'd done cross country at school. It was around that time I realised that I was a good runner rather than a fighter, and survived to tell the tale, I guess. But it was tough down at Tottenham through the 70s and 80s, as I'm sure it was when Tottenham came down Sir Matt Busby Way or what it road.
Yeah, I guess. Tottenham's last game at White Hart Lane was against United, wasn't it? But now this shiny new ground, you're a big fan of it, aren't you, Pete?
Oh, absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. I got a ticket in the ballot for the first United game to to be played there, or it was going to be played there. And I was absolutely delighted. I couldn't wait for it. And that weekend, it was March 15, 2020, they should have played. And that Friday, they called off the Football League fixtures. They'd never done that in times of war, even, you know. No, I don't want to come across as, not caring. But I was really upset that they'd call the game off, you know. So I got there. I didn't get there for that. Couldn't get there for the game they played because it was behind closed doors. But I'd say that Ollie's almost penultimate match was there in November 21, October 21. And I'd heard it was a good ground. It just took my breath away. Right as you approach it, down that long high street, you can see it for about half a mile. Looks great. Looks like a cathedral. And inside, it's just superb stands. Really high, really... Not, the slopes are massive. And that south stand, Abdul, just takes your breath away.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, a Tottenham fan, Doug Bagley, you might know him, says they've got the longest bar in Europe. Not at a football ground, but anywhere in Europe. It's the longest bar in that south stand. So I don't know. But yeah, I'm very much traditionalist when it comes to clubs not moving grounds. So when you move next door, I thought, that could work, and it might work at Old Trafford, obviously, if Mr. Radcliffe's plans come to pass. But you really have built something that even surpasses White Hart Lane, I think, even though it is actually on White Hart Lane.
Do you feel that way? Has it changed the identity at all? Are people still with their mates and how they want to be?
Yeah. People got to move around a little bit in terms of ticket allocations and things like that, and it's settled down now. But like Pete was saying, the good thing is that we're in the same area. When we knew we had to move, well, White Hart Lane wasn't big enough. You know, everyone else is getting bigger new stadiums and things like that, or getting given one like Man City. Levy started playing a bit of hardball with Haringey Council and stuff like that. Oh, we're going to move to the Olympic Stadium and things like that. And then you're like, I don't want none of that. So to be able to, oh God, there's a grim over there. To be able to build it in the same footprint as White Hart Lane is brilliant. Brilliant for the area as well. I mean, that's the one thing I like about sort of stadiums in the UK is that they're in the community a lot of the time. You know, I've been to the States and seen sport, and they're out miles from where, the fans are, sort of live. Whereas Tottenham, it's a working class area. To have that there, and it's like, like people say, it's like when I first went there, it's like fucking spaceships landed. It's like, bloody hell. And you always feel, not in, God, do we deserve this? It's like, what? The contrast from White Hart Lane to that is just amazing. And yeah, they've done brilliantly doing that. And that's on Daniel Levy, that is. He's had a lot of criticism, stuff like that, former chairman. But that surpasses everything that I've ever been to.
Right, Abdul's gone full talk sports, so I'm going to draw a line under this episode now. Unless you want to add anything, James.
Well, I just think it's an interesting opinion on that. I mean, I'd be very wary of new stadiums only because what I guess makes me slightly uneasy with Spurs is the fact that they have NFL there, they have concerts, they have F1, the sort of focus of it. I think the football, you can risk it being lost in actually what the stadium's for in a way. And I think I've seen quite a few Spurs fans actually complaining about the fact that on the front of the stadium where they had the Europa League sort of winners, it got taken away for like an advert for, I think it was a concert or something like that, So I just think you just got to be careful with new stadiums.
Plus, if United do build that new ground, they're going to have to bulldoze your house for it, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I won't be afford to be able to live here anymore, so yeah.
No
hold out for a good hold out, James.
I don't own it.
How many young people do you know who own property, Pete? Come on. Right. I think we can all agree that's another seamless and successful podcast there. We've dealt with goal line technology, we've mastered XG, and it's such a relief to have the rainforest situation sorted out finally. I will admit I had to write those notes before I knew what we were going to discuss. Anything you want to tell us, creamofmanchester1878@gmail.com or via the socials. Once more, the footballing authorities have been making sure that fans come first. That's right, it's another international weekend ahead. The 17th of the season so far. So while you're preparing to listen to every pub bore's opinion on Jude Bellingham, I have been trying to prepare an episode with a difference. It might happen, it might not. Watch this space or don't. I don't give a shit. Bye.